Hello again, and welcome back to the third episode of our podcast, Global Insights. This is Emilia and Stella speaking again.
Hello, welcome back. In today's episode, we will be exploring the rich history of Israel and Palestine and their fight over its territory.
The conflict between Israel and Palestine has been covered a lot recently, in recent months, especially since October 7 when the war broke out. And I think a lot of people may not know why the conflict started because there's actually a long history behind it and it didn't just take place by accident. So we really want to delve into this history of the conflict, and we're going to start in around the Middle Ages because that's when a lot of the important events happen. And we're going to talk about this in a kind of timeline format, so there's going to be a lot of dates, there's going to be a lot of events. And even if you don't understand every single part of this, that's fine because in the end it's all going to make sense, and our goal is for you to get the big picture behind it.
Okay, so I'd say we dive right in, right?
Yeah, so we're starting in the 7th century Common Era, or after Christ, and in that century Muslim Arab armies conquer the region and it becomes part of various Islamic caliphates. So what that means is that at this point in time, the region of Israel, of today Israel and Palestine, is Muslim.
1099, the First Crusade captures Jerusalem, establishing the Kingdom of Jerusalem. The build-up of the Kingdom of Jerusalem created a widely spread kind of a wave of Christianity to take over this land.
One piece of information which is very important to know to be able to understand what we'll be talking about today is the fact that Israel and Palestine, that region, specifically Jerusalem and Bethlehem, for example, are cities and territories which are very important in three of the world-leading religions, namely Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, because the Bible, the Quran, and the Torah mention a lot of these places because a lot of the people mentioned in these holy scriptures actually lived in that region. So it's a very important region to all of these three religions, and therefore a lot of wars and a lot of conflict has been fought in the territory. Around 100 years later, in 1187 Common Era, Saladin recaptures Jerusalem for the Muslims.
Around 300 years later, in 1517, the Ottoman Empire takes control of the region, which remains under Ottoman rule for the next 400 years.
For those of you who don't know, the Ottoman Empire is what is now Turkey, basically. So, under the Ottoman rule, the region of today's Israel and Palestine became known as Palestine. Then, in the 20th century, in 1917, the Balfour Declaration expresses British support for a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine.
Just 3 years later, in 1920, the League of Nations grants Britain the mandate over Palestine. This means that the British had control of the territory.
Between 1936 and 1939, an Arab revolt against British rule and Jewish immigration took place for the first time.
In 1947, the United Nations proposes partitioning Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states.
Finally, in 1948, the State of Israel is declared. Two solutions were proposed during that time, a one-state solution and a two-state solution. In the end, however, only the State of Israel is declared, and the State of Palestine remained a territory and not a country. After that, the first Arab-Israeli war follows, and the displacement of a huge number of Palestinians, which became known as the Nakba.
Nakba is the ethical cleansing of Palestinians through their violent displacement and dispossession of land, property, and belongings, along with the destruction of their society and the suppression of their culture, identity, political rights, and national aspirations.
So now let's move on to the post-1948 period. In 1956, the Suez Crisis takes place, which means that Israel, the UK, and France attack Egypt following the nationalization of the Suez Canal.
In 1964, the Palestinian Liberation Organization was formed.
In 1967, the Six-Day War took place. This was a war where Israel captured the West Bank. As a result of the war, Israel captures the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, East Jerusalem, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights.
In 1973, the Yom Kippur War took place, where Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel.
Interestingly, on this date, exactly 50 years later, October 7 happens.
Interesting.
For those of you who don't know, Yom Kippur is a Jewish holiday.
Mm-hmm.
In 1979, Egypt and Israel signed the Camp David Accords, which leads to peace between the two countries.
In 1987 till 1993, the first Intifada happens, a Palestinian uprising against Israeli occupation.
In 1993, the Oslo Accords occurred. This was an attempt at a peace process leading to limited Palestinian self-rule in parts of the West Bank and Gaza.
From 2000 to 2005, the second Intifada happened, a period of intensified Israeli and Palestinian violence.
In 2005, Israel unilaterally withdraws from the Gaza Strip.
In 2006, Hamas wins the Palestinian legislative elections and later takes control of Gaza.
For those of you who don't know, Hamas is a terrorist organization located in Gaza.
Located in Gaza, that the Palestinians have had to convert back to due to the lack of power they have as a community. And
In 2008, in 2009, in 2012, and finally 2014, multiple wars and escalations take place between Israel and Hamas in Gaza.
On the topic of recent developments, in 2018, the US moved its embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing it as Israel's capital, sparking international controversy.
This is because actually Tel Aviv is the capital of Israel, but the US recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel implies that Jerusalem fully belongs to Israel, even though half of it is technically Palestinian. In 2020, several Arab countries, including the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco, normalized relations with Israel under the Abraham Accords.
In 2021, renewed conflict in Gaza following tensions in Jerusalem occur. They mean casualties and destruction.
In 2023, there are continued tensions and sporadic violence between Israelis and Palestinians, with ongoing international efforts to revive peace negotiations.
And then finally to the day that began this recent conflict was October 7th, 2023. On this day, Hamas launched a large-scale attack on Israel involving rockets, infiltrations and incursions into Israeli territory. The attack results in numerous Israeli casualties and kidnappings.
Immediately after the attack and Israeli military response, so from October 8 to October 10, also in 2023, Israel responds with extensive airstrikes in Gaza, targeting Hamas infrastructure. A state of war is declared by Israel, and reservists are called up. Reservists are like extra military that Israel might need just in case something like this happens.
And then about mid-October in 2023, the conflict escalates with heavy bombardments on Gaza. Ground operations are initiated by the Israeli Defense Forces.
The humanitarian impact of the conflict is that from October to November in 2023, the conflict leads to a severe humanitarian crisis in Gaza. There are thousands of casualties, including civilians, reported. Infrastructure damage is extensive, affecting hospitals, schools, and residential areas.
The initial aid and protests. On topic of international aid and protests, International organizations and countries call for humanitarian aid and ceasefire. Protests and demonstrations occur globally, demanding an end to the violence.
After that, there are some diplomatic and political developments. So in late October 2023, diplomatic efforts intensify. The United Nations, the United States, Egypt and Qatar attempt to broker ceasefires and peace talks. Limited ceasefires are agreed upon, but they often collapse quickly.
In November of 2023, the UN General Assembly passes resolutions condemning the violence and calling for a ceasefire once again. The US plays a significant role in mediating talks between Israel and Hamas.
The regional and global reactions to this conflict can be seen between October and December in 2023 because the conflict impacts neighboring countries. Lebanon and Syria, for example, experienced skirmishes along their borders with Israel, and Iran and Hezbollah express a strong support for Hamas.
And then on the topic of international reactions, countries around the world, including European nations and Russia, engage in diplomatic efforts to de-escalate the situation. Sanctions and travel advisories are issued.
And then finally, in the current year, in 2024, in January, a fragile ceasefire is achieved, mediated by international actors. There are some talks about a long-term solution, and rebuilding efforts in Gaza begin.
On topic of humanitarian aid in this year, efforts to provide humanitarian relief and rebuild Gaza's infrastructure are ongoing. International agencies focus on providing medical aid, food, and rebuilding essential services like hospitals.
And there are some political shifts, so there are internal political shifts in both Israel and Palestinian territories. And elections and leadership changes are anticipated as part of the long-term peace process.
Yet all of this is still ongoing, and tensions are ongoing as it is still not a ceasefire, and bombs are still being dropped, innocent people are being killed, and just as a quick fact, Israel has dropped more than 70,000 tons of bombs on the Gaza Strip since last October, far surpassing the bombing of Dresden, Hamburg and London combined during World War II.
So as you can see, it really is a very, very violent conflict. A lot of lives have been lost, thousands of lives actually, on both sides, of course.
Mm-hmm.
It has been declared that both sides have committed war crimes, and the ceasefire doesn't seem to be happening as of now. So the only thing we can really do is hope that the politicians can come to a deal or a solution to this problem, because it's affecting a lot of people. And if you want to help and support those who are affected, you can always donate to NGOs which are working in the area, and of course you can educate yourself more on the topic, because really we only gave you an overview of everything that happens. I mean, so many things have happened in that specific region, but we hope that you learn something, and we hope that you'll take something with you,
and we hope that you even give this information further to your friends. And
so yeah, thank you for listening, thank you for taking your time to inform yourself on this topic, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, till next time.
Bye.